And we are back with the Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. And we are on chapter 36, Against the Vain Judgments of Humans. All right, so the book that we're in is called the Interior Conversations. And so this is taking a look at prayer on the inside and looking at our relationship with the divine on the inside. And, since Christianity is a bhakti yoga path, or it's an instantiation if you're a computer science person, Christianity is an instantiation of the bhakti yoga template. And so it's about relationship. It's about the state of your relationship with the beloved, with the divine. And so we're looking now at the vain judgments of humans. And why are they vain? Well, they're vain, one, because we're here for barely a breath and then we're gone. So who cares what our opinions are in that sense? And then also the vain judgments, and because we only know about 1/1 billionth of what we would need to know to make any judgments in this universe. We don't know, even if we do know somebody very, very well, we only know them in their adulthood very, very well, probably. And if we have known them their whole life, we still have only known them for this life. And so our actions and the summaries of our being throughout time are really a matter between the divine and us. And if we have opinions and judgments about others, it's vain. That just means it's useless. It really has no value to do that. I have found in my life, I can say I was talking about being in one of the best places in my life that I've been in a long time. And one of the reasons for that is definitely when I learned to have as few opinions as possible, to only form an opinion about something where it's absolutely necessary for me to have an opinion. Otherwise, it's like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Let it be what it is. Let it do what it does. Because if you have opinions, you have expectations. And if you have expectations, you're guaranteed to suffer. Guaranteed not to go well. So against the vain judgments of humans, Christ is talking here. He says, my child, firmly cling to the Lord and do not fear the judgment of humans. All right. So obviously, because people are going to have all kinds of ideas, and they're always ego born. There's no other reason to have an idea than for egoism. And so this is going to happen. We're going to offend somebody's mind or bump into someone's body. And since they believe that to be them, they're going to come back with some energy. If you've done that 10 times over, they're going to dislike you and call you klutzy to their friends. And Jesus is telling you, don't you worry about that. Let them call you klutzy. My child, firmly cling to the Lord. Okay, like that, firmly, not just cling to the Lord, but really hold on. Because sometimes you go for a real ride. Sometimes he'll take you right to the edge and you'll think you should jump. But you shouldn't. All right, so firmly cling to the Lord and do not fear the judgment of humans. When your conscience assures you that you seek to be devout and innocent. All right, so this don't care as long as your conscience is clear. So he's putting a little caveat in there that you shouldn't care about what others say if you have a conscience that's clear, if you really know that you're doing your part and you're doing what you can, and if you know that there was no selfish motive on your part for it, then definitely don't worry at all about other opinions. Just continue to cling to the Lord. And actually, even if there is some value in it, that's still not between you and that other person. So you can just forgive them for being nosy and cuddle up to the Lord and say, is this true, Mother? Do I need to fix that? And, Mother has a very nice way of poking you in the nose and saying, yes, get it done. Consider it a good thing and rejoice then when you suffer that way. It will not be burdensome to you if you are humble of heart, nor if you trust more in God than in yourself. Right? So there's two little keys there. How do we make it, how do others' opinions less burdening to us? One is be humble of heart, right? Don't expect anything from others, one way or the other. And so take whatever comes in whatever portion. Nor if you trust more in God than in yourself. So get rid of the egoism. Understand any time that you're annoyed. This is a good one. This is actually something that's been helpful to me too. Is this any time that you're annoyed, any time that you're bothered, any time that you're offended, know for sure it is only the ego, because only an ego is ever bothered, annoyed, or offended. The self is never, because the self doesn't have any of those qualities that it's concerned about. The self, it does not have a boundary, it does not have a limit, it does not have any kind of identifying feature that could be offended, right? It is the self, and it's the same self in everyone. So it's going to see itself in everyone, and it's very hard to offend yourself. So it says a lot of people utter many things, therefore attach little importance to what they say, right? And of course, this would depend on the person. If it's somebody you really respect and someone who's a great spiritual seeker, and they've had an opinion of you, then it might be worth investigating that, find out what that opinion is. It could be helpful to you. But if it's just some random person with a random opinion, let them have it. Let them have whatever opinion they want. What does it matter? You know, when you can be that way, life is much easier. And by not forming opinions, which means not really beginning an attachment, an opinion is the beginning of an attachment. You know, I remember one time them asking me what color the steps should be on the front of the monastery. And I really didn't care, but they asked me. And so I formed an opinion. And I told them, well, I think you should do them dark brown. And then when I saw that they did them beige, then I was unhappy. And I was actually mad at them, because the reason I wanted brown stairs is because I wouldn't have to sweep them every day. But because they wouldn't show the dirt. And I was the only brahmachari. But when they asked me and I formed an opinion and then expected brown stairs and they put beige ones in, I had to go out and wash those things off every day because of the black sooty air from the city collecting on that nice, beautiful, light beige every day. And that was the only time I've ever had a senior Swami apologize to me. If that matters at all. But it's one of those things that sticks in your head. You know, Swami Prabhupada, it's the only time in my entire life that a senior Swami has come to me and said, oh, you were right. I was like, wow. I didn't get too boastful because I knew how rare that was. I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. But unfortunately, I was only right about a color. So it wasn't something that really mattered. All right. Anyway, before I go on here with that. Neither is it possible to satisfy everybody. St. Paul tried to please everyone in the Lord and became all things to all. Nevertheless, he paid little attention to being judged by humans. He worked for the formation and salvation of others as much as he could and found possible. In spite of all that, he was unable to prevent others from sometimes judging or despising him. Yeah, he couldn't even stay out of prison. You know? So that's the thing. There's a lot of people are after us for weird reasons, you know. Even if we're living very upright lives and being very kind and loving people, somebody's going to get jealous about that, or resentful of that, or misunderstand that, right? Therefore, here's a great solution. Listen to this. Therefore, he committed everything to God, who is all-knowing, and put on the armor of patience and humility against the onslaughts of evil tongues, or against those who thought or expressed vain or bad things about him. Right? So he says he committed everything to God. So all of his actions offered them, all of his kindness offered them, all of his doings were offered to the beloved. Right? And so when you offer to the beloved, when you give it to God that way, you cease to ownership. You cease to own it. You cease to feel any defensiveness around it. It's no longer something that has to be justified. It's done. It's finished. Whether or not you do it again, that could be another question. But this time it's been done, it's been offered, it's been given to the Lord. So we've already moved on. And you just, anybody has big opinions about them, you say, well, it's already been done. We'll take that into consideration next time. Thanks for having an opinion about it. So do everything for the Lord. This is karma yoga. Karma yoga says, don't do anything for its result, do everything as your offering. So in this moment, when you're doing whatever it is in front of you, you're doing worship, you're doing puja. And as soon as you've got something finished, that's your flower. That's what you're going to offer. And so you offer it. When you offer something, you don't take it back. You don't worry anymore about where it's going to sit on the offering tray or how much of it's going to be offered. After you've offered something, it's none of your business anymore. It's done. And so you offer it and move on. Be glad. Put together your next offering. So therefore, he committed everything to God, who is all-knowing, right? And you would say that because God knows if there is something wrong, he's dealing with it or she's dealing with it. If there's nothing wrong, then there's nothing to worry about. God, who is all-knowing, and put on the armor of patience and humility. There's humility for the second time. Really, that's the best way. That's really the only way to deal with being offended or annoyed or angered is just humble yourself. It's like, get over yourself. The way that happened to me, remember I told that story? We had a young man who joined the monastery and he was a young brahmachari. Of course, I was a brahmachari at the time too. But he came in, and I was accustomed to sitting in that shrine, the monastery shrine, all by myself all the time. And he was in there and he was just so restless, just shifting and moving and fixing his chatter and fixing his dhoti and moving and shifting again, getting up and sitting down. And I went to Mother in my meditation, I was like, in my head, I was like pointing. I was like, Mother, look at this. What? How am I supposed to meditate? This guy's sitting here, moving all over the place, constantly making all this noise. I said, what's going on with that? Really, in my own mind, I heard Mother say to me, she's like, he has an invitation too, and it's an invitation from me personally, just like yours. So if you both had invitations, you should respect my invitation. And I was very quiet. I understood. My ego didn't have an invitation. Right? And so that's why we're trying to leave it outside. So humble yourself, extend your sense of self to include that other person. That's what it means. Don't defend your barriers, open your door. That's what he's saying, right? Humility is the act of opening your door, extending your concern of self to include the other person. And that will take care of it quite a bit. So he committed everything to God, who is all-knowing, and put on the armor of patience and humility against the onslaughts of evil tongues or against those who thought or expressed vain or bad things about him. Sometimes, however, he answered his accusers, when his silence might scandalize the weak. Number 3, why be afraid of mortals? All right. That's the thing. It's the one thing about this place. Everything's going to pass. Everything will go. A human being is here today and gone tomorrow. Keep up a wholesome fear of God, right? And whenever the Christians use the word fear of God, you can put in the word respect. To have a healthy respect for the divine. Don't take God for granted. Don't be, what's that word? When you're not being serious, you're being not funny, but flippant. There it is. Don't be flippant with the Lord. Don't be casual in your showing of respect. If you're going to act like a child, and take some of that right to act like a child to the mother, then do it with that knowledge that you're leaning on your right as a child to misbehave in front of the mother. But don't just assume, I don't care. If you do it like an unksy teenager, then you're probably going to get in a little bit of trouble. But if you're doing it out of pure love and a real trust for Mother and a real idea that she is your mother, then by all means, just by all means misbehave, no problem. Keep up a wholesome fear or respect of God, and you will not find it necessary to be afraid of humans. What can others really do against you by word or insult? Those who thus attack you hurt themselves more than you, and wherever they may be, they will not escape God's judgment. Yeah, probably just worry about the first half of that. You don't have to worry about what God thinks about them or what God's going to do to them, because that's presumptuous. We don't know what that is. So we don't really worry about that, about what God's going to do about it. But we do take this idea, this what he's saying here. He's like, keep up a wholesome respect for God, and you will not find it necessary to be afraid of humans. That's right, because you'll be coming to the knowledge of your own self. Fearlessness is the end result of realization. So fearlessness would include any concern whatsoever toward vain opinions that others may or may not have about you, and the gossip that others may or may not indulge in about you. I say that because that's a sensitive one for me. Boy, I really can get into an iresome state when I hear that somebody's been, chit-chatting in a negative way about me. Boy, my ego just puts its hood up and stands up and wants to go right to war over that. So don't do it. Take refuge in Mother. Take refuge in the divine. Hold God's opinion. Hold the opinion of your conscience as being the only ones that are important. And anything else that anybody says, you can offer it to the Lord. Say, Lord, such and such said this. If it's true, please help me to overcome it. If it's not true, please help me to forgive them for it. Right? And then move on. Don't mention it again. Endeavor to walk always in God's presence. Well, there it is. That's the very center of spiritual life, is always to walk with the awareness of I am, is one way of saying it, or to walk in the company of your beloved. Endeavor to walk always in God's presence and refrain from arguments. And if at times you have been overcome and are undeservedly suffer confusion, do not be downcast. Do not lessen your future reward by yielding to impatience, but rather look up to me in heaven, for I am able to deliver you from all trouble and injury, and to repay all persons according to their works. Right? So what a wonderful invitation this is. That if you do get into a situation where you're lots of people pulling down on you, kicking you around quite a bit, he says at that point, still don't be impatient. Don't get bothered by it. Don't let it get under your skin. Simply look up at me. Just look at me, say, and know that the Lord is seeing you. That the Lord that is there, because he says, I am able. I'm able to deliver you from all your trouble and all of your injury, and to repay everyone according to their deeds. And he's even got a greater ability than to give to everybody according to their deeds, and that is that he can give from his grace. We should never forget that. That should always be primary, actually, and rather, we should not look to God to punish others, especially those who are insulting or hurting us. That's not a good place to be, but look to God that he might be merciful to them as well, at least as merciful as he's being toward you. Right? And so we want that. We don't want people to get their comeuppance. The ego does. I was just experiencing that earlier. I watched a YouTube video earlier about this kid. It's from a movie. I don't know what movie it was, but some kid that's always getting picked on. And he always demurs, he always gets out of the situation by just talking about it or just saying, fine, I don't care, whatever. And it goes on. But this time the bully won't let him get away. And the guy turns out to be a master fighter, of course, because that's how we like the movies, right? And whips up that bully real good, takes care of him real nice. And boy, I tell you, I realized watching that how much I love that. There was really a part of me that was like, yes, get in there. And I became aware of that ego, seeing that. I'm like, God, it's still so strong in there. It's still so big in there. So when we see things like that, make a note of it. Just at that time also look up at the Lord and say, Eesh. That's really all you have to say. But be sure to say Eesh. That's a very meaningful word in prayer. All right. So God is able to deliver you from all trouble and from all injury. So look to him for that. Be only concerned about that. If you're only concerned about what love and wisdom think of you, you're in a good place. Chapter 37, on self-renunciation to obtain freedom of spirit. All right, that's interesting here. Christ is saying, my child, renounce yourself, and you shall find me. Stand as though you had no power, not the power of choice. Cast out all self-seeking, and it will always be to your true advantage. For you will always gain greater grace when you have given yourself up completely to me without taking back your gift. Right? And so, okay, there's a couple things in here, very interesting things that he just said. Renounce yourself and you shall find me. Right? What is that self? Of course, it's your ego self, right? And once the ego self is out of the way, we see God clearly, because ego is the veil of Maya. It is the blinding veil of Maya. And so when you in fact remove that veil of egoism, me and mine, you limit the concern you have for me and mine, and stand as though you had not the power of choice. So stand as if you are not the doer, right? So stand in a state of surrender. A surrender to what? To your higher nature, the nature of love and wisdom that is in you. So we stand as though you had not the power of choice. Cast out all self-seeking, all me and mine. Cast it all out, and it will always be to your advantage. Right? Beautiful. It is always to your advantage to be unselfish, which is a wonderful thing to come to know, because we only are selfish because we believe that selfishness is going to be our advantage. But it is never our advantage. Here Christ himself, God herself, is saying that cast out all self-seeking, and it will always be to your true advantage. Right? So there is never a good reason to be selfish. Never a good reason. Cast it out, because it will always be to your true advantage. For you will always gain greater grace when you have given yourself up completely to me. Right? We talk about that, actually. The only way to be able to accept grace fully is to give up fully, to give up yourself fully, right? To become infinitely humble in order to accept infinite grace. Because if there's any thought of I can do this, or I can manage this, or I'm going to get this done, a mother will let you do it. She won't come pick you up out of the playroom until you put the toys down and cry out, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. The disciple answers, well, Lord, how often must I forsake myself? And in what things must I practice self-renunciation? Right? What's the limit? Peter asked the same question. Peter asked Jesus, how many times should I forgive my brother? And Jesus says, forgive him as many times as he comes to you and says he's sorry. And Peter said, 7 times? Jesus said 7 times 7. It's like there's not a limit to this. Do it until you don't get bothered by it anymore. Do it until you've let yourself be free of being concerned about it. Just go forward. So how often do I have to forsake myself, and in what things must I practice self-renunciation? Christ, you must forget yourself always and in all things, in small things as well as in those that are great. I make no exceptions, but want you to be divested of your self-will in all things. For how can you be wholly mine and I totally yours if you still entertain self-will within and outside yourself? Wow, there it is. right? Why is that? Because it's this self-will that got us thrown out of the Garden of Eden. Right? When we looked through our senses at that beautiful fruit and then took it upon ourselves to think we had a choice, right? Oh, I can eat this or not eat this. And then we chose to eat it. We gave birth to egoism, and we cast ourselves out of the garden, out of paradise. Because now that the divine will is no longer the ruling will, we're going to suffer. There's going to be suffering now. There's going to be a lack of wisdom now in what we do. Right? So, in all things, all the time, it should be according to the will of the divine, to the beloved. There should be no service of desires inside. There should be no service of, our little trinkets for enjoyment. This is what the lesson that Girish Ghosh learned, right? When he when he gave God his power of attorney. He hadn't thought about it. He didn't realize that giving God his power of attorney meant that he could do absolutely nothing by his own choice. He had to go to Thakur for every little thing all the time. And he was like, wow, I should have picked the other options. But he became a saint from this. And so really, don't take it upon yourself to live your life. Take your entire life and lay it in the shrine. Take everything about yourself and lay it in the shrine. And once you've done that and given it all to the Lord, then all of your troubles are God's troubles. Right? You say, and Brother Lawrence, very bald-faced tells that to God, when he makes a mistake and was kind of messing up, he goes to God and he says, oh, I've stopped thinking about you, and look what's happened. And he said, and what did you expect, God? If you let me forget about you, this is always going to happen. If you ever let me forget and be in charge of myself, this is what's going to happen. So please don't do this again. It's marvelous because there's truth in it, right? There's truth in it. And because of that, there's a lot of power in saying that. It's like, but you better mean it, though. If you've been wantonly forgetting, then you don't have as much leverage to blame the beloved for it. But it's still probably a good idea to get in there, that personal relation. I find that personal relationship touch with the divine is very effective in that relationship as a bhakta. To never be afraid to express yourself to the beloved, to the divine. Never be afraid to ask something or question something or to need something or want something. Always be very honest. Always take it to the mother with an open face, open eyes. For how can you be wholly mine and I totally yours if you still entertain self-will within and outside yourself? The sooner you accomplish this, the better will be your condition, and the more complete and sincere your renunciation. The more will you please me, and the greater will be your spiritual gain. All of that you'll feel inside. We just feel so much better about ourselves when we're not being selfish, when we're not forming selfish desires and expectations and not putting them on those around us. There are some who commit themselves, but with some restrictions, for they do not trust God fully, and so they are busy providing for themselves. Some at first give up everything, but afterward, under the pressure of temptation, they return to what they had forsaken, and so they do not advance in virtue. Such persons will not acquire the true liberty of one who is clean of heart, nor will they obtain the grace of the most joyful familiarity with me. To attain this, they must first wholly renounce themselves and daily offer themselves as victims of sacrifice to me. For without this, there cannot exist any lasting divine union, right? Because this divine union is a literal merging, right? And if we're different from the divine in any way, that merge can't happen, right? If you have any desire or any thing to do that is separate from the will of the divine, you're going to have to work that out before you can be at one. Because to be at one means to be in perfect harmony. All the waves of sound align in a perfect line, perfect arrangement. And so this surrender to God's will, we've talked about it quite a bit, because in Christianity, when you grow up in a bhakti tradition and they talk about that idea of, surrendering your will to God, I used to feel a certain amount of indignation at that. I was like, well, what about my will? What is this? That I just have to give up everything that I think for you? Why? Because you're bigger than me? Because you're more powerful than I am? Because you've been here forever? Or what? Why would you be interested in me having to give up everything about me? Right? I used to feel that way. I used to think, what is this going on here? But see, it's a complete lack of understanding, because our highest will is the divine will. And God's will is actually our will, but we haven't gotten enough clarity of vision to see that. We actually think that we have something worth willing, right? Something worth wanting. That's something that Sri Nisargadatta says. He says, when a sinner plays chess with God, he thinks he has a first move. He says, when a saint is playing chess with God, his first act is always to lay his king down. That's his first move, right? So in your play with God, understand that you don't have a good move. Your ego doesn't have a good position. There's not going to be anything advantageous no matter how you play that game if you're going to start with egoism. And so we should fully surrender ourselves to the beloved, because that will give us what we're really looking for. Because God is not acting out of anything but love. And anytime someone's acting from love, it's going to be an advantageous and beautiful thing. So surrender to these acts of love from God, and don't bother with trying to come up with your own ideas, your own future for yourself. Because you will not acquire that true liberty. You won't get liberation, because self-will is always connected to body-mind. And to maintain that self-will will require body-mind. So you'll never get the freedom of the soul. You'll never be able to soar if you hold on to your egoistic ideas and tendencies. No, that liberty belongs to one who is clean of heart, pure of heart, right? Someone who's removed all of that, who's removed me and mine from themselves. I have often told you, and I repeat it again, forsake yourself and renounce yourself, and you shall enjoy great interior peace. Wow, this is interesting. This is an interesting way of saying this also, because we've been talking about moving out of mind, right? Moving away from body and moving into the shrine of the heart. That's where we find our interior peace. When we get below the noise of the mind, right? We extricate the noise of the body. But here he's doing it as an act of renunciation. So renunciation is being tied very closely to this idea of no mind, no body, no thought. That you're finding the shrine interiorly is also a renunciation, not just a gaining a truth, which is kind of where we were coming from it before, not just because it's truly who you are, but it's also this act of renunciation. And if you can forsake yourself, your egoism, and renounce it, you will find great interior peace. You actually find interior peace, because there is always interior peace right here, always. If you aren't placing your attention and sense of self here, but are remaining with thought of yourself here, you're never going to experience this inner peace, because inner peace is never from here. Inner peace is when you get below there, get below the noise of the mind, below the noise of the body, and sit in the shrine of the heart. That peace is already there, has always been there, and will always be there, because it is your natural state. It is the Garden of Eden. And by conquering desire, right, which is what we'd say, we have to get rid of that cherubim with the flaming sword at the gate that's keeping us out of the Garden of Eden. That's flame of desire is having any kind of egotistical will separate from God. So it's exactly what he's talking about. So we have to vanquish desire, all of it, in order to enter back into the Garden of Eden, which is the shrine of the heart, your true nature, where you're outside of time and you're in the presence of the beloved, and only the will of the beloved is considered. Give all for all. Seek nothing. Take nothing back that you have given up, and stand with pure detachment and with full confidence in me, and then you shall truly possess me, right? Because that will be an act of pure love. And that's why Ramakrishna says that God is very reticent to give out pure love, because he becomes a slave to someone who has pure love for him, right? He can't say no to you if your love is pure for him, right? So give all for all. Give everything up, knowing you're not going to lose anything, right? That was my wonderful realization that I've tried to put into words. That night that I moved into the monastery, the first night in the monastery, I was shown to my room. I only had one suitcase with me. And I went up into my room, and it was already decorated, not very well, sort of more Victorian droll than anything. And the pictures on the wall weren't mine, and the books on the shelf weren't mine, and the bed wasn't mine, the pillow wasn't mine, the bed covers weren't mine. All of that, and I laid there and I fell asleep crying. My first night in the monastery, I cried myself to sleep because I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, what have I done? And the next morning I woke up and I was so chipper. I was so happy, and just had such a wonderful, just a fond sense of being in the morning. And it was such an important thing for me to see, because I had given up everything. I didn't have anything. My bank accounts were gone. My property was gone. Everything was gone. And I woke up that morning with such a positive, optimistic feeling in myself. And I woke up and realized I'm still fully me. I didn't give up anything, right? All those things had nothing to do with me, even though I was so deeply identified by them. After I gave them up, there was no hold. They're like, what was that? That was nothing. That was simple. So give all for all. Don't be afraid. It's only hard on this side of the act. Renunciation before you do it, very difficult. Oh my gosh, terribly unpleasant thing to do, it seems, right? But if you do it and you come up on the other side, renunciation is always beautiful in hindsight. You're always happy you did it. You're always happy that you did it. So give all for all. Seek nothing, right? Because you need nothing. That's the truth of the moment. The truth of the moment is that everything necessary is here. The truth of the moment is that you are divine, ever free and ever pure, ever blissful. There is nothing necessary that needs to be added to you at this moment. So understand that and seek nothing. Don't look for anything outside of yourself, right? There's nothing out there. Take nothing back that you've given up. So don't double think yourself. Be courageous. Don't backtrack. Stand with pure detachment, right? The detachment can only happen in purity. Purity is always the absence of me and mine when it's in a spiritual scripture. Purity always means without me or mine. So have a pure detachment, right? So a detachment that's not selfishly oriented, not thinking about something you're going to get for this detachment. Stand with pure detachment and with full confidence, right? So count on the Lord for everything, for your food, for your salary, for your day, for your success, for everything. Have your full confidence in me, and then you shall truly possess me, right? And this is when it gets so wonderful. just so beautiful when you're not, when you don't have any sense of guilt within, for the way that you're doing, when you have a feeling that, yes, I'm putting in my best effort, I'm really trying, and you've had a few days of that, and mother is kicking in as she truly promises here, and there's just a wonderful sense of being inside. The presence is easy to think of, easy to be aware of. Your will for your desires becomes much more quiet, and the prominent thing within you is just this welling sense of warmth in the chest. This love becomes so evident. The love of the presence becomes so evident that really the outer world begins to pale in comparison. You start to carry your own atmosphere, because you are your own temple, you are your own shrine, and the beloved presence is always there. And when you live in that space, in the heart space there, and know that you're just an observer of the play of God in your life, there's no greater bliss than that. There's no greater joy than that. There's no greater fun than that, right? And that's when you really can play with the Lord. You can be a part of the play in that sense, because you too are being motivated by love, and that's the story that God wants to hear. Then you shall enjoy true freedom of heart, and darkness shall not overcome you. Right? You'll walk in the light. You'll walk in the light. I don't know. Well, anyway, I was going to say my problem with this is that we come to this place every now and then, where things finally coalesce and are coming in a beautiful place. But there always seems to be in me, and this is just personal stuff. This is not part of the teaching. I'm just sharing it because I'm your brother. But there seems to me like there's a self defeating aspect to this, that when my life gets in such a good place, it's almost like I have to throw some mud in the pudding. It just like you almost get too nervous, like you're doing too good and I can't maintain this. And so you have to do something to mess it up, right? And so all these things, the mind, that's just something maybe unique to me, maybe not. I threw it out there just thinking maybe somebody else has that trouble. But it's not necessary. That's just old mind, that's just old mind wanting its old patterns, wanting its comfort of familiarity, not real comfort, just a familiarity, that the comfort that familiarity breeds, the comfort of an ego, right? A distraction. And so, but if we can manage, to act from the heart, out of love for the beloved divine, in a constant memory of the presence, constant knowledge of the presence of God, in full surrender and full confidence, then you shall enjoy true freedom of the heart, and darkness will not overcome you. Aim at that alone. Pray for it, desire it, that you may be divested of all self-seeking, and so, spiritually naked, follow the naked Jesus. Thus you will die to yourself and live forever to and for me. Then you will be freed from all vain imaginations. What does that mean? That means all delusion, right? You'll be freed from all vain imaginations. You'll be free from all delusion, right? So desires disappear, right? Desires disappear because there's no memory, does not raise up any expectation of enjoyment for a body and for a mind, because you're no longer identified with that. You're now fully identified with spirit. Then you will be freed from all vain imaginations and from all wicked disturbances and useless cares. Then also you will no longer yield to unruly fears, and inordinate love will die in you. Right? So there's the promise. And there's a beautiful place to stop for the day, because it's the end of the chapter. But just this, I love to pay attention, though, to these promises. These promises always really, I mean, they're the thing for me. They're the thing, because I really want to be able to stand in front of God and say, you promised.
No.
you know, I want to go through, I'll hear that litany of judgments, and I'm like, yep, you're absolutely right. But you promised that you would take care of me and that you're going to get me where I need to go, And so we live according to these promises. So he says, renounce, do it. Renounce your ego, renounce your body and mind. Do it thoroughly and completely. And then have all the confidence in the world in me. I've got you completely covered. Don't feel like you ever have to go back and pick something up. Always know that if you're with me, we've got it going on. Everything's perfect. And enjoy that space. Enjoy the presence of the beloved in that way. And when you do mess it up, because Lord knows you probably will at some point, doesn't matter. Grace is infinite. Sri Girish Ghosh, remember? I'm probably the only one that uses him in his example for this, but he tells, he at one time said, if I'd ever known there was such a huge pit within which to throw my sin, I would have done so much more. No, I didn't say that. I'm repeating scripture so that I don't get in trouble for this. But the idea is know that the love of God is big enough for you. Right? The love of God is big enough for you. And there's no reason that you won't be with the beloved forever, that there's no reason that you will fail in this, that this is inevitable because it's what you are already within. You just have to sort that out. You'll be free and you'll enjoy this time with your divine beloved, and it will never end. You will fall more in love with your beloved every day from now until forever, because the love of God has no limit, has no bottom, will not run out. So with that, we'll stop for